So welcome once again to the ClearAdmit MBA Essay Insight webinar series. Today, we're going to hear from 5 admissions directors across a group of great schools. And let me make some quick introductions and also give you a sense of the structure for today. So my name is Graham. I'm going to moderate the session, and I'm the co-founder of ClearAdmit. That's all you need to know about me. We have 5 esteemed panelists today, and I'm going to do some quick intros there. This is going to be a lot of fun because we're going to do sort of roundtable questions and dig in on each of our panelists' school's essays. And then all of our guests have been kind enough to agree to stick around for a bit of time at the end, and we'll set up some Zoom breakouts so that you can go and ask questions. But let me make some quick intros. First up, we have Amanda Weiner, who is Assistant Dean for MBA admissions over at Georgetown University's McDonough School of Business. Welcome, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. We're also today going to hear from Andrea McHale, who's the Director of Admissions over at Michigan Ross. Hey, Andrea.
Graham, thank you for having me. Welcome, everyone.
No, it's terrific to have you. And we're also going to hear today from Mandy McGuire, who's Associate Director of Admissions and Student Recruitment at UNC Kenan-Flagler. Mandy, thanks for joining us, and thanks for sending over your hot off the presses essay questions, which we'll get into later. So I don't know, this might be where people first hear about them this year, but thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to connecting and excited to see everyone today.
Yeah, thanks so much. We're also going to hear from Bailey McChesney, who's the Director of MBA admissions at Vanderbilt's Owen Graduate School of Management. Hey, Bailey.
Hi, everybody. We're so excited to be here and looking forward to connecting with you today.
And I want to say Bailey has this amazing background, but she's actually sitting inside the building that is her background. So it's like not so fake in the sense that she's in the building that you see behind her. So that's very cool. Last but not least, I want to introduce Kate Botelho, who is the Senior Associate Director at Yale School of Management. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Graham, always good to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. All right, so let's dive in. I know that our attendees are all probably, looking to apply to business school this coming cycle, and maybe many of them in round 1. And so what's going to be top of mind for them? Well, writing essays and filling out all these kind of written components of the application. And so I want to start with Amanda and just ask you a very simple question, which is why do you have essays in the application at McDonough? What are you hoping to learn from a candidate's essays that you can't get elsewhere? And then if you would comment on whether or not your team has a policy or any kind of thoughts on the use of AI when it comes to essays.
Yeah, happy to start. So the essays, the essays are really where the personality comes through in an application. So it's where we get to see who you are as a person. We've seen stats, we've seen your GPA, we've seen your test score perhaps, and those are great. Those are insightful, certainly, but this is really where you come through as an applicant, who you are, your personality, what you will bring to the program, who you would be in our community. So it really gives a voice to your application and more depth to it than those numbers. So what we're hoping to learn, Georgetown takes an interesting approach, which I know we'll talk about later. You get to be really strategic in what you share with us. So it can be a professional example. It can be a personal example, maybe telling us about how the way you grew up impacts the way you see the world and work with teams and that kind of thing. So it's kind of open on purpose so that you can really tell us your story and craft, the story you want to share with the admissions committee. In terms of AI, ChatGPT, and all of that, such a hot button issue I know we're talking about. So this will be the first year we have a policy about that. I would say the general advice, we haven't finished it yet, we're working on it, but using it as a tool to be strategic, I think is the important part. Obviously, again, the whole idea is to get a sense of who you are as a person, your personality. So if you have ChatGPT write your essay, we're going to lose that, right? So using it as a tool, being strategic in the way you use it is really the goal with the policy that we'll be crafting. And that would be my advice with using AI.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, thanks for shedding light on that. You're totally right. It's a very hot button issue these days. And, not all schools have exactly the same approach. So I'm glad that you're weighing in there. Let's turn to Andrea now at Michigan Ross. Andrea, how about you? Why do you guys have the essays and what are you hoping to learn? And then again, comment on AI.
I mean, similar to what Amanda had just shared, it is not a reason for us to create barriers. Essays are extremely important to us in understanding who you are as an applicant. It's one of the only areas before the interview where you get to shine as your true, authentic self. It's for us to understand what your values are, what your motivations are, how you think. And so we really look heavily in that first evaluation at those essays for fit and kind of that individuality. In terms of AI, this is our second year now with an AI policy, and that has not changed. Just like Amanda said, we want to create as much accessibility as possible. So using AI as a tool is absolutely okay. We do ask that you cite that in your essays if you use it as a tool. Definitely avoid any type of generative content within AI or machine learning. That is not at all a okay use of AI. And just like we're allowing you to use tools, we use tools within our evaluation process. We use an AI tool to search for plagiarism. So if you are generating content with AI, it may be flagged as plagiarism, and that would be an instant deny in our process. So just please keep that in mind.
Okay, and yeah, good to know. I mean, I think one of the things you mentioned that really resonated with me was this idea that the essays aren't a barrier; they're a place for you to kind of really shine and share your background. And I just want to point out, I don't know that those who are joining us today have a full understanding of this because they maybe aren't applying to other grad programs, but there are many other kind of pathways that people take, whether it's like law school or where things are much more rigid. And I feel like MBA admissions is so terrific because all of these schools give you an opportunity to stretch out, really share your full background. And that's what, when I used to be an admissions reader, and reading files is just so much more interesting for business school than any other discipline, I think. But let's now turn to Mandy over at UNC, Kenan-Flagler. Yeah, take us through your responses on these two questions.
Absolutely. And I'd love to kind of build off of that since you hit on that too, Graham. And I think, our sort of take on that and what we usually say is that, yeah, we're not looking for barriers. We're not looking for reasons to deny. We are truly, as readers and admissions officers, looking for reasons to admit. We want to get to know you. We say that a good bit, like, oh, wow, I'd really love to advocate for this person. And we get so much of that great information through the essays, right? We're looking for those authentic stories. We are looking for you to share that you really know yourself. You've done that reflection. You've been able to take into the fact that you don't just want an MBA, but for us here at Kenan-Flagler, you want a Kenan-Flagler MBA. And so you're able to showcase that through the essays. So this is the part that you really differentiate yourself from the fact that I think, both Andrea and Amanda mentioned this earlier, that you are sort of taking a step away from just the academics, the pieces of the puzzle that look probably pretty similar to some of the other people who are applying to the program. This is where you really differentiate yourself. So we want to see that fit factor, that you've done that reflection, and then that you do it a really in a clear, concise way. That's what we want to see through the essays as you're coming through. When it comes to that AI question, I would also say a very hot topic. I don't know that we're quite where it sounds like Michigan is with a really clear policy at this point. I think, it's very typically pretty true that we can tell after this, years and years of reading where we feel things are pretty authentic or not when it comes through in an essay. I would advise you to use it as a tool when you are trying to maybe generate some ideas. If you're looking for ways to positively use it, when you're thinking about doing some of your research, when you're thinking about some of your high level points, we would really ask and advise that you are using your authentic voice, your authentic self as you're going through. And that will show through, because if your essays all sound different because they're AI generated for different topics, it's going to really feel inauthentic. And so that would be one of my biggest tips.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, thanks for weighing in on that. I do want to mention, I see some questions are popping into the chat, and I just want to remind everyone that we don't really do Q&A during the main session, but that each of our panelists is going to stick around at the end, and we're going to set up some Zoom breakouts so you can ask questions of the schools at the end. next up is Bailey. Do you want to take us through these questions, Bailey?
Sure, yeah. So I'll add to what my colleagues have shared. I think one of the best things about an essay is for a candidate is it's where you have the most control. So you kind of take out the variable of being nervous in the interview or stuttering over your words. You really have the ability to control everything that you articulate through an essay. And so what we're really looking for within an essay is for you to be able to go beyond your resume, add some depth to your overall application, and for us to really get to know you as the candidate. Vanderbilt does have a policy on AI. It's being rolled out for this upcoming cycle. So, as a business school, we embrace the use of emerging technologies. So, while we support the use of AI as a tool for checking grammar or maybe brainstorming, our policy is that AI does not replace independent thinking. We, expect the application content to be authentic to you and who you are as an applicant. So, really looking forward to navigating the essays with you all today.
Yeah, and that's a terrific point that, we talk a lot, even just on clearedmit.com and some of the articles that we write, there's a lot of conversation around there are things you control, like the essays, and then there are things you kind of just come into the process with, like where you've worked or where you went to undergrad or even your grades. You can't go back and change your grades, So, so the essay is a great opportunity to really shape, as you say, the narrative. Kate, you've been really patient. I'm curious to understand how this works at Yale. Why do you have essays? And in your case, you really just have the one essay, if memory serves. But what are you hoping to learn? And yeah, is there an AI policy?
Great, thanks, Graham. Yeah, so like everybody that's spoken before, we do have essays. They are important. What we're looking for really and why we've developed the essays we have is because we're just looking to learn about what's most meaningful to you, what drives you, what's important to you. And so, we'll talk a little bit about what those essays are and how we structure them in a little bit, but really it's all about getting to know you. In terms of AI, similar to Ross and what Andrea said, we've had the policy for 2 years now. And what we like to say, and kind of boiling the policy down, is we want you to use AI like you would use a friend in the application process, right? Use it for ideation, use it as you are proofreading. It can be really helpful for that. But really, it should end there. It shouldn't be crafting your essay for you. In order to practice what we preach at Yale, we actually used AI to help us develop our policy, but we found that it needed significant shaping by us and a lot of intervention to make it sound the way we wanted it to and with our voice and actually convey what we wanted. So just know that we do practice what we preach as well.
All right, terrific. That's really great that you guys used AI to help shape the policy. All right, so let's move on. Now we're going to get into the section of today's agenda that is really focused on giving each of our panelists a chance to dive into their program's essay questions. So again, we'll go alphabetically. So we're going to go back to you, Amanda, over at Georgetown McDonough. We have a set of slides with your essay questions on them. And what I'd love for you to do is pick one of the essays and walk us through kind of why you ask it and any advice that you would have with regards to, someone setting out to write it. And I may have some follow-up questions based on where you take us.
Yeah, so if I had to pick one, I think we'll go to option 2, so Cura Personalis. I like this one because it truly highlights the Jesuit values at Georgetown. I think it really speaks to who we are. So, highlighting that idea of care of the whole person, getting an idea of when you really, supported a teammate, a coworker, and yeah, getting a chance to really highlight how you connect to our values. So why do we ask it? And I know we can touch on the 3 different essays. So like I mentioned earlier, we give different prompts so that you can really be strategic in what you share. So you'll see in essays, even within the same prompts, you'll see people who want to highlight a professional example. You'll see people who want to talk about maybe work they do with a nonprofit or something they went through in their background that was a significant turning point for them, like a big personal development moment, something that they went through. So we leave it open so you can really craft that narrative and share with us. You have that flexibility to share what you want with us. I think what's great about all of them is that you do see the values come back to it. So whether it's talking about your background, what you contribute to the community, a time when you achieved excellence, it all you'll see from our applicants ties back to those Jesuit values, obviously big piece of who we are as a school. Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Oh, I just had some like sort of follow-ups, but
Oh, okay.
I want to kind of clarify. So yeah, basically, as you can see across these slides, I think we have 3 slides because there are basically 3 options, but each
Yeah.
candidate just writes one. They get to pick the one that they want, which is interesting. And you've kind of answered one of the questions I have, which is why you're doing that, and that's because you want people to have that flexibility. One thing I was curious about, do you know if these are going to stick for this coming cycle? These are the questions that you had last season, and I know we have this note here that says they could change. Do you guys have any insight yet into that? Is that a work in progress?
For sure. Yeah. So something I think that's fun that we do every year is we basically pull a list of how many people identified with each prompt. So if we see that one prompt really did not resonate with people, then we'll change that. So I know we're doing that right now, looking at them and seeing, people just did not like that option. So clearly we need to make some adjustments. We're doing that right now.
Okay, well, that's really scientific. It's great. Yeah, because I guess if no one's answering one of the options, then it's not resonating. The other question I had for you is, and I don't know if we have a slide for this, but you guys also have what I'll call a video essay, where I think the job is that, the candidate sort of introduces themselves or talks about something they're passionate about. Here it is, video essay. Yeah, so it's at the bottom of your screen here. And, this seems to really stipulate that it's meant to be about a hobby or an adventure or something that people like to do, and they have 1 minute. And I wondered, so why are you asking this, and what advice would you give to someone as they prep for that 1 minute kind of video? And maybe people are a little self-conscious when they're making a video. I mean, there's, so any advice on this one?
Yeah, so much. So really, truly, it's to see who you are outside of your resume. So we know where you work, we know where you went to school, we know all of that. But what really gives you joy? What is exciting to you in your life? What are your hobbies? Tell us about your pets, your travels, something fun you did at work recently. There's so much fun to watch. And my advice would be not to overthink it. So I've seen, again, people's pets. I've seen them going for runs throughout their city. I've seen kids. I've seen a lot of cool hobbies. Like someone showed us like their cross stitching recently, which was so cool. A lot of art. So it's just so fun. It's a great way. Again, you're a lot more than your job. You're a lot more than where you went to school, all of that. There's a whole other part to you that sometimes can be a little rigid, I think, in the MBA side. So tell us more about that and tell us something, you can really see people come to life when they talk about something they're passionate about. And that's what I really love in the video essays. You can see a glimpse of that moment where they really light up.
And someone on your team was telling me that they really enjoy this piece because they sort of feel like you don't get to interview everyone in person or even via Zoom. And so it's like a quick glimpse at the candidate that you don't get on paper, so
Exactly.
Seems like a fun exercise. And, everyone, I think your advice about, not overthinking it makes a lot of sense because you're not looking for Hollywood production values on this kind of exercise. It's really about the content. And all right, excellent. So, we'll stay tuned to try to, do you know when you might release the new essays? Is that kind of sometime this month or by August 1st or something?
Yeah,
Is that the
definitely.
plan?
It should be hopefully this month before August 1st. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. We will stay tuned. All right. Well, thanks for all those insights. Let's turn to Andrea at Michigan. Ross, same assignment, Andrea. We've got your essays here on I think we got everything on one slide for you. And yeah, which one do you want to just take us through one of them and explain why you guys asked it?
Perfect. Thanks, Graham. So I'm going to focus right now on our part 1. And why I'm focusing on that is last year we had 3 required essays, and we basically have combined 2 of them into this part 1 career aspirations. And why we did that was not at fault of our applicants in any way. It was probably us in terms of our clarity. We saw some redundancies in the 2 responses of those essays, and we wanted to make sure we combined and then also increased the word count to allow for our applicants to be as reflective and again shine as much as possible. So in terms of what the essay's applicant response to this is how clearly they've thought about your career path, even though that may change and pivot as you learn more and proceed throughout your MBA experience. We understand that, but also how our applicants understand Ross's unique offerings, so that you've intentionally mapped out the resources, the action-based learning principles that we have in our education and our curriculum. And the purpose of this is to be reflective, to understand your self-awareness and that alignment with the Ross experience and the Ross culture. So tips in being successful in this essay is to, one, be yourself. The best responses are always authentic and specific. So clearly work to articulate the hope you gain from your MBA experience, how it connects to your post-MBA goals. Don't ever write what you think Ross wants to hear. We want to hear from you. And action-based learning is important to us. So do your research, be reflective in that process, and is that an environment that you will thrive and grow in?
So I have a couple of sort of follow-ups. So the first one relates to this first essay, and that is that I noticed there's kind of an emphasis on short-term career goal. And, this sort of jumped out at me because a lot of schools ask, oh, what is your short-term goal? And then what is your long-term goal? And so I just wondered, like, what was the rationale there to keep the focus on the kind of immediate post-MBA plan?
Yes. I think you just nailed it right there. It was like it's immediate and actionable outcomes within the MBA experience. So our career development office works very kind of holistically in developing the entire self and having a map and a path for success throughout your entire career. But one of the things we're looking for is how we can support from our curriculum, our resources, and the opportunities in that post-MBA path. I'll share a little bit of information for all of our prospective students. As a Ross alum, you have access to a career coach for life. You also have access to free executive education for life. So you are well resourced within Ross for your long-term career trajectory. This is us looking at the most immediate actionable items within your short-term career.
Okay. And then the other question I had, I want to look at this second part two here. And it's funny because it's not actually that common. I know that today's attendees are going to be maybe misled, but it's not that common of choices. And yet here we have Georgetown and I think Yale and Michigan have these like choice type essays where you can pick, which is really lucky. I mean, a lot of schools, it's like, here's the essay, write it. So here you have these 4 potential choices and the candidate has to pick one. And I noted when I was looking at them, I was kind of like, oh, 2 of them feel very like, give me an example of something. So can you provide a specific example of that second one? And then the last one, describe a time when. Whereas the other 2 feel a bit more big picture, like what makes you unique or what makes you excited to get up in the morning. And I wondered, like, do you have any advice for someone who's sort of like wondering which path to take? Like they're, because yeah, how do you, I mean, do people tend to kind of, do you see all 4 of them pretty uniformly? Because I think these were all in the process last year, right?
Yes, so they're not new to last year's cycle, and it was pretty across the board equal responses in all 4 different prompts. It's why we kept it. We found it very meaningful in our application review last year. Just like our other 2 prompts that we've consolidated, we found obviously opportunities for us as a program to improve upon. But you're exactly right. 2 of them are more big picture reflection, and the other 2 are more situational. It is really dependent on the individual and how they want to approach this portion of the essay. But this is an opportunity to really reflect who you are as an individual, what experiences you want to share with the admissions committee. And we find this one extremely valuable in understanding the applicant and who they are.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, thanks. I know we're getting kind of into the weeds on some of these things, but it's really helpful. I try to ask these questions that I think those in attendance who are applying would have as they look at this stuff. Let's turn to Mandy now. And literally, I'm just for full disclosure, these are like hot off the press. I mean, and I can't believe that Mike, I got to give a shout out to Mike on our team who's put them into a slide somehow in the moments that have elapsed since we started the webinar. So Mandy, like pick one of these that you want to talk about with us and yeah, take us through why you ask it and any advice you have to someone writing this.
Sure. Awesome. Yeah. And thank you again to your team. We're not quite ready to share, just finished updating these, which is always exciting for schools as we get ready to launch these. And I think Colleagues on the call have said, we're reflecting based on how we maybe asked the questions in the past, right? So that's what I wanted to highlight here, is that we have done that kind of review as a team to hopefully help you all in our goal of shortening our essays. That's one thing I'd highlight across all of ours right here. They're much shorter than they have been this past year. And that's our goal of you really being concise, clear, and helping us get to the point on each of these. So I think one of the big ones to kind of point out here that, so we've seen a lot of goals essays, we've seen a lot of those. I'll maybe hop to number 3 here. We are, it's focused on our core values, which are impact, innovation, inclusion, and integrity here. Those are our 4 core values here at Kenan-Flagler. So we ask you which one of these resonates deeply with your professional journey, and then share that example and really how that has influenced your actions and decisions. And so this question, it gives us a few different things about you. And this is a new question this year. It's been asked in different ways in interviews in the past. And so we have switched it up and moved it to our essays. So that's another reason I'm focusing on this one. This tells us, and what we're looking for from applicants is that, number 1, what are the things that you value as a person? How does that connect to us? It tells us about you and your passions, and how you approach challenges maybe, or different situations, and those values you bring to those things outside of the classroom, in and outside of work. It also tells us a bit of, have you done your homework on Kenan-Flagler, right? It tells us a little bit more about learning how these core values sort of, navigate themselves within our community here. So it tells us a little bit of both, and how you connect those dots for us. So that's really kind of what we're looking for within that essay. Have you done your homework on our program? And seen yourself kind of within these values. One big tip here, you will see that we ask for which one of these core values. When we ask this in interviews, many times people in the past tend to still want to talk about 2, 3, or even 4 and connect themselves to those. Please ensure that you stick to 1. I see lots of my colleagues on the screen smiling up here. I think many of us have all been in that situation where we ask for one thing and folks kind of go a different way. So really, just a big tip in general on essays, but specifically this one, when you're asked for a certain situation, question, number of things, really pay attention to that, because we're asking for that, and give you really a pretty limited amount of space to focus on that one topic area. So really ensure that that would be a big tip, that you follow that and focus on that one example for that one topic area. And that would really help us out as we're looking to read that and get to know more about you through that process.
Yeah, none of you were here last week, but we did a similar panel last week with a different set of leading MBA programs like yours. And there was a steady kind of drumbeat of, please answer the question as exactly like what we've asked. So I think people sometimes try to shoehorn in something they've written for one school into another, or they just aren't, they come in knowing like, oh, I want to share this, and they're just going to make it fit kind of. So definitely follow Mandy's advice, answer the question. Also, as you point out, Mandy, with 250 words, if someone tries to put 2 anecdotes into this, you're going to get not much information about either of them, right? So there's not a lot of word count. I actually love the fact that you offer these 4 values, but then say which, resonates most deeply with your professional journey, because that allows someone to say that, here's what's happened in my journey. It doesn't mean that they don't believe in impact or inclusion, or whichever ones they don't pick. They're just picking the one that has been, most consistent with their career so far, which I think makes it easier for them. So yeah, anyway, we'll see how it goes, because it's a new one for you.
Absolutely.
I did have one follow-up question on essay 2, which is, this sort of idea that, your MBA program's enriched by the experiences and things that people bring into it. And I wondered, how specific does someone need to get? So on the one hand, you could say, you could write an essay and talk about what you've done and what you're bringing into the MBA at Kenan-Flagler. On the other hand, you could spend just as much time talking about exactly what you would be doing in the program that would allow you to bring that in. So is there a balance there? Like, I mean, I presume people should do some research so that they're not just saying, oh, I have this great background in architecture or whatever it is. They need to connect it somehow to what they might be doing in the program. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair. Connecting those dots between yourself and our program is really important. So there should be a balance on sort of your past history. As we say many times in admissions, past experiences do typically lend itself to what we can see in our programs, and whether that's academic, professional, co-curricular. And so we do want to see and understand what you're passionate about, right? What you enjoy being part of, how you spend your time when you're not at work or when you were an undergrad, right? In the classroom. So we do want to understand that about you in areas that you really see yourself getting engaged in here. So we would love to see, that's right, that you've made the connection to our program, that you understand it, and that you can really speak to what that looks like in 250 words or less. So back to that point, yeah, find balance of navigating that amount of space with balancing your past and then where you see yourself here.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, thanks again. And I did not mean to put you on the spot with respect to the essays coming hot off the press. Actually, we're really excited about that. We love it when schools debut their season's essay topics at one of our events. So that's totally great. Let's turn to Bailey at Vanderbilt. And yeah, we have the same setup here. We've got some slides with your essay questions, and would love for you to, looks like they're actually just all on one slide, it looks like. So pick one and take us through it.
Sure, great. We have two required essays. One is a career-focused essay and one is a reflection essay. So I'm going to focus on the career-focused essay here because it is a little bit unique. So essentially what the essay is asking is for you to contemplate your post-MBA career goals and share two that you plan to explore while you're in the program. And I want to point out that our ask is not that candidates share a short-term and a long-term goal or a plan A and a plan B. What our team has really found in partnership with our Career Management Center is that when candidates start the program, they're really exploring multiple career paths. So right now, our incoming class is learning all about all of the different career explorations that they could potentially have within the program. And on the same day in the fall that a corporate recruiter would be on campus for consulting, a different corporate recruiter might be on campus for investment banking. And so we really feel like the two post-MBA career paths reflects the true experience of an MBA student. And so also I think for a candidate, I want to share that, in our essay, you don't have to have it all figured out. So you don't have to have, I want to do this for this company. There is a little bit of freedom within the essay to start to narrow it down into what's led you to the decision to get an MBA. A couple of things that are different within this essay this year is we are giving candidates the option to also share their career journey thus far and a little bit about the decision making for what's led you to the decision to get an MBA. So in addition to kind of starting to narrow down what are those, immediate post-MBA career paths, we're also asking candidates to reflect and share a little bit about their journey so far, what's led them to the decision to get an MBA, and then really think about, what are those transferable skills that you've developed so far that will help you in those post-MBA career plans as you move forward. So hopefully that helps kind of share a little bit about, why we're asking, for two post-MBA career paths versus maybe one or a short-term and a long-term. So.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And you probably know this, but this was an area that I was going to push you to kind of explain. So I'm really glad that you put that out in front. That allows me to ask you a question about the second essay, which you didn't speak to, but I'm kind of wondering, as I read this, I was thinking, wow, this is a great opportunity to share an anecdote and, to bring your kind of candidacy to life. But I wondered, how vulnerable could one be in talking about a stressful situation or challenge? Like, is the goal to demonstrate amazing results under pressure, or is it okay to show growth from a situation that did not go to plan, or something like that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think this is a brand new question for us this year, and when we developed this question, we really thought about like the MBA experience. And so much of an MBA is about applying your learnings and skill set to a situation. And so what this essay really does is give candidates the opportunity to reflect on a previous situation, and a little kind of insider information. And when we were developing this question, we are giving candidates the freedom to be vulnerable by using that word challenge, but we also wanted to add in a stressful situation to give the freedom where, if you don't necessarily feel comfortable going, extremely vulnerable, you can also share just a stressful situation. So really, for a candidate, if you're looking at this essay, we would encourage you to share whatever you feel most comfortable with. But, kind of leaning on like, what did you learn about yourself in the process? How did you adapt? What was the outcome? And either, going kind of vulnerable if you wish, or, also giving the freedom where it doesn't have to be this like super deep answer too.
Okay. Yeah, this is cool so a couple of you have new essay questions for this year, and so you'll get to see how they pan out as you read them. And I do, just going back to essay one, I do think it's really interesting to give people that flexibility to talk about two things they're looking to explore. I will say we find that, when people are posting on our site, like they're putting up their profile for like to get feedback from everyone. Often they do say, oh, I'm thinking about this or that, but then often when you start to write the essays, you're kind of forced to only talk about one thing, right? So it's an interesting approach, and I can see why the career office would want that too. So Kate, again, very patient at Yale, being at the end of the alphabet. Let's turn to you. You guys are the third school in our panel that has an essay that allows for choice. So I know which one you're going to talk. Well, I don't know which of the three, but I know this is the essay that you need to talk about because it's the only one that you guys have. So take us through.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Graham. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm not going to talk about just one in particular because we actually developed these 3 essay topics because we want you to talk about what's most meaningful to you. That was our goal. And so we wanted to give you choice to be able to talk about something that was really resonant to you and that you wanted the admissions committee to know. So we have no preference as to which one you choose. And, there's not special weight to one of these. You should really think to yourself at the beginning of this, really reflect on what you want to tell us, what you're excited to tell us, what is, what you're passionate about, what motivates you, something that has happened to you in your life that you want to explain to the admissions committee and talk to the admissions committee about. And then honestly, I'm certain that one of those things that you've thought about will fit nicely into one of these prompts. And that's really our hope in giving you these options. So again, really from my biggest piece of advice for all 3 of these actually is to really talk about the approach. I think Mandy said this, and it's very, very, very clear in all of our, I think in our essays is, those past actions are what predict your future success, and how you'll be in the community here at the School of Management. And so being able to hear about how you approach something of significance in your life is really helpful to us as we learn more about you.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, this is a little bit of a lesson from the history books, but you guys used to just ask the first question, if memory serves, right? And then you added these 2, and it's been a couple of years now where you've allowed people to have this flexibility. But I do think about this issue of, which I think applies to all 3 options, which is, if a candidate is hesitating about, oh, this is an MBA application, I need to talk about a professional experience or something professional, or, oh, no, these are, these kind of essays are pretty open-ended. I could talk about a personal like challenge that I faced, like, a family member that I was, had to provide nursing care for because they were sick, or, there's all kinds of things that people could talk about. Are you looking for something like in particular, or is it fair game to talk about something personal or professional, or whichever topic you pick here?
Yeah, that's a great question, Graham, and good memory. Yes, commitment was our essay topic for 8 years maybe. And then we did expand it 2 years ago to offer a couple different options because of feedback from candidates that, they felt that maybe it was a little limiting. And so we wanted to open it up a bit. But in terms of professional or personal, I'll start by saying there's no preference. And I think your point, Graham, is a good one, that I think a lot of candidates think they have to write about something professional in one of these essays, or in general for MBA programs. Specifically for SOM, it asks you to think of something that's personal. It doesn't have to be what you go with. You could go with something professional, but just think about the fact that, we're reading a lot of information about your professional life. We get a lot of information from the letters of recommendation, from your resume, from some of the other questions that we ask throughout the application. And so maybe just, entertain an idea of something personal. Again, it might not be what you go with because you think your story that's more professional is more compelling, and that's certainly what you can go with. But just know that we don't have a specific preference. You should write about, again, what's most meaningful to you, and what you want to share with the committee.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate you shedding light on that too. And I do think you're right. There's that tendency, for people to say, oh, this is a professional school. I've got to use a professional example. But I love your point that you see a lot about their work experience, whether it's from the recommendations, the resume, that's all there. And so this might be an opportunity to share something else. Let's move on. We've got one more kind of segment, and I do want to remind everyone that's with us that our panelists are going to stick around. They're going to bounce into some Zoom breakouts, and we'll answer all of your questions, and we're looking forward to that. But before we do that, we have this little lightning round, and so we're going to stay with Kate and go backwards through the alphabet. Kate, what's one thing you love about working in MBA admissions at Yale SOM?
All right, just one thing. So I'll say that. So our mission is to educate leaders for business and society. And so one thing that I've just really enjoyed is just seeing how our students kind of live that mission while they're at SOM, but even more like what they do with it once they graduate. So students who are going just into the kind of general pure finance, and how they live that mission, and how they think about their teams and who they're working for, their employees, or students that are looking to kind of, change society as a whole in some way. So I just, I guess students, but realistically just kind of seeing how they live that mission.
Okay, terrific. Bailey, how about you? What's one thing you love about working in MBA admissions at Vanderbilt, Owen?
Yeah, sure. I think in admissions, you get the opportunity to really create opportunities for students. And so I think it's amazing at the end of the program when students, recognize that this degree has really changed the trajectory of their career and potentially their family. And so it's fun to be a part of that on the front end, and to really see it play out. So it's probably the best part.
Okay. Mandy, how about over at Kenan-Flagler?
Yeah. Bailey stole mine a little bit, but I will say that, one of, I think it's always been a big thread for me. I've worked in undergrad admissions and then into MBA admissions over the years. And I think, but one of the other big pieces of that is seeing people on the front end as candidates, right? And all the excitement that they have for our program, and then watching them come here, and not only the big things that Bailey mentioned, but also I love watching, even just recently at a lot of our admit and enrolled student like happy hours, and as they're starting to get here for orientation, and just watching them come together already as a cohort, and the excitement, and knowing that like I and the rest of the admissions team got to play a huge part in that, right? Like that's a really cool piece of that, because they will have that for 2 years, but then they'll also have that network and cohort as they move forward. And that's like that personal piece of the MBA program that I think is very different than other grad programs. I think it's just a very different setup than any other type of grad program out there. So there's that part as well that I'm like already seeing come together for this group starting fall 25, which is really cool.
It's true that you all get to play almost like it's sort of like an exponential version of matchmaker, where you're putting together all these different people, and then you get to see, how it all works out. And, it's usually pretty amazing because people are coming from such different backgrounds and everything. Let's turn to Andrea at Ross. What's one thing that you love about working in MBA admissions?
I think in general is that, as an admissions officer, you play a small but extremely meaningful part of someone's life and their trajectory. But my favorite part, and particularly at Ross, is throughout our application process, we utilize our alumni throughout, from the interview to the recruitment. And I love working with prospective students and seeing them engage with our alumni. I was in New York this past weekend, and it's just something magical about seeing, like, in that early stage MBA student, prospective student, through an experienced alum, and all the amazing things that like a prospective student is going to be able to accomplish within their career. And I just get to sit back and watch. I was like, oh, this makes my job so easy.
Yeah, it's funny. Now you're reminding me, many years ago, I was in New York City, and your predecessor was doing an event for Ross. It was like Ross alums and a prospective student kind of event in New York City. And I just remember being blown away by, there were tons of people there and lots of alums. And it just, yeah, you definitely, that must be so rewarding to put those two groups together. So yeah,
Amazing.
terrific.
I just really appreciate being part of it.
Yeah, and that goes, I mean, this is true for all the schools on this panel. You would be amazed at how the close-knit these communities are, even in cities where, I'm talking about New York. Obviously, Michigan's not located in New York, right? Ross is in Ann Arbor. And yet, there are these amazing alumni networks in all these cities that you'll find. All right, let's go. Amanda, thanks for allowing us to go backwards through the alphabet. What about you? What's something that you love about working in MBA admissions at Georgetown?
Yeah, well, what everybody else said, plus one on that. In addition, I would add, I just love reading files. We get such an interesting group of applicants all over the world, all different industries, so many jobs I didn't even know existed. It's fascinating. So I love talking about the essays because that's one of my favorite pieces, is learning a little piece to your story. And being able to cheer you on through the process. So like they said, being a small part of that journey is really incredibly inspiring.
Would you say that even if we'd asked you this question in like October, November, when you have like a pile of
Yes.
applications to read? Yes.
I am well known for
Excellent.
this. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, let's stay with Amanda for our next lightning round question, which is, we've been talking about essays, I mean, the whole time, right? So what's one piece of just non-essay advice that you would have for someone who's interested in McDonough?
Great question. I think this would go for any program truly, but speak to our team, speak with alums, speak with students. Getting to talk to people is so influential, and really getting a feel for the community. People on the ground who are looking at like events every day, emails, who are in the classes, who can really speak to the program is just, I think, the most important part when you're looking at programs. So events like this, the tours, the individual sessions, all of those great tools, but must do when you're looking at the programs.
Okay. Andrea, how about with Michigan Ross? Any advice that you'd have that's not essay related?
It was the same as Amanda's. I was like, be an active participant in this process, stay engaged. So I'll pick a different application criteria. You're applying to business school, and your resume is very important. It should represent you professionally and academically. So take some time, have someone review that just like you would have someone review your essays. Really focus on impact and quantifying those outcomes. It should not just be a job description. So take some time in that piece as well of the application.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that and say that I think sometimes candidates spend a lot of time, and I know we've just done a whole session about essays. They spend a lot of time on the essays, and then they kind of like, don't spend enough time, not just on the resume, but even on like the data for like the filling out the online application form and all the little questions that you ask, about employment, et cetera. So please, leave time for that, I would say. All right, let's turn to Mandy. How about you? What's one piece of non-essay advice for Kenan-Flagler applicants?
Yeah. So I think my biggest piece would be to really focus on still being able to tell a cohesive story. I think we get into, you kind of focus like maybe this week I'm really focused on essays. This week I'm really focused on, I start with the biographical information of the application. You're doing all these parts and pieces, right? You're structuring your application process based on what works best for you, which is great. But then I feel like a lot of times applicants don't go back and fully review and think about themselves as one cohesive story. So I would really encourage you to go back, whether it's little things like double checking that like dates on your resume match the dates on maybe a work experience section, or something of that nature, and that things make sense, but also bigger picture things. If you talked about, maybe that you intend to go into a certain industry, but then like the clubs on someone's campus that you want to go into are totally different. Make sure that everything tells that one cohesive story, because we all as admissions readers are reading thousands upon thousands of these, and we will really put some red flags on that if we start seeing contradictory stuff that doesn't make sense within your whole story. And so just take a breath at the end, take a breath, look back at your entire application package and see how it feels as one piece all together.
Okay, terrific advice. Bailey, how about you? Something for Vanderbilt candidates that you would advise?
Sure. I would say know your why. So really reflect on what's kind of led you to start pursuing an MBA, and then let the why drive you, even down to kind of like what schools interest you, what you're wanting to do after the program. Really knowing your why, I think, is important as you start to navigate the next step through an MBA.
Yeah, and I feel like that always shows in your application materials and your interview if you've done that homework with respect to thinking. So great advice there. Kate, how about you? One piece of non-essay advice.
Yeah, I actually want to echo what you said, Graham, because I want to make sure it's really taken to heart, and that I think candidates really should spend the time to make sure you're answering all the questions that are asked by in the application. We spend a lot of time and effort each year making sure that what we ask is what we actually want to know about you and what we need to know from you in order to get to know your experiences. So for example, in our application, we actually ask you, for each of your career transitions, why did you leave this company? Why did you leave that job? And that helps us to kind of piece together the story, why you made specific transitions. We're not asking you to write an essay. It's really just a quick sentence to tell us why you made that transition. And it's really helpful to know that. And a lot of candidates might just say, got a new job or more money. And that's not as helpful information. So really just take the time to answer questions.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, and I think one of the things we hear sometimes when we do these webinars is this idea of don't ever make the admissions reader play detective. And some of those questions that you're asking in these forms are precisely so that you don't have to play detective. And if you don't answer them, you're just leaving these sort of holes in your candidacy. Kate, let's stay with you for our last lightning round question, and then we're going to let our candidates chat with each of you in your breakout rooms. So we did this in honor of Michigan's essay question. What makes you excited to get up each morning? This is just for fun, guys, but I think it's always fun to turn an essay question around on admissions officers.
Are you saying asking or answering what our biggest commitment is isn't fun, Graham?
Well, I don't know. I thought we need more time for that.
Yeah, no, completely joking. I love this question. This is a great question, Ross. So, I mean, I will say that I dream about coffee every night, but really what gets me up is I have two daughters, and they are the best. And I, wake up every morning just thinking about how I can be a good example for them.
Oh, that's terrific. I thought you were going to say they wake you up each morning, so you don't have a choice of, they actually pull you out of the bed.
Hey, it's summer. They're sleeping in. It's great.
There you go. Excellent. All right, Bailey, how about you? Something that makes you excited to get up each morning?
Yeah, sure. I'm with Kate, huge coffee fan, but I will say my kids are young and they're very into morning hugs, and so that makes the morning very fun these days. So.
Awesome. All right, Mandy, how about you?
I wish I had something unique. Apparently, you picked the panel that's in this mode right now.
Ah,
Yeah, I have a 4 and 7-year-old, and yes, they do make me, Graham, get out of bed whether I'm ready to or not in the morning right now, summer or not. But they do like inspire me also to get out of bed. They are fun. I never know what's going to happen next. They're always making me laugh. I'm going to learn something crazy, silly, or really cool and creative too. And so all of those things are absolutely my reasons for getting up, whether I'm really sleepy or not. But that's with Kate and Bailey on that as well.
All right, Andrea, are you going to break the cycle here, or are you staying in the same territory?
Slightly. So my career started in automotive and healthcare. So I've been in higher education now for just over a decade, but like my mentality was always like drive results, right? Perform. And now I've kind of like sat back and I was like, I really am trying to appreciate those smaller moments, those meaningful moments of creating change, both with our prospective students, our current students, and my team. But also with my family. So different stage of life. My oldest is now a rising senior. And so you'll see me a little less on the road. Like I'm taking a step back from travel so I can see all the laughs and just appreciate all of that.
Yeah, I think we talked about that a little bit a few weeks ago. Yeah, because I'm in the same boat. All right, Amanda, how about you?
Same answer. So coffee, and I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So I
There
am
you go.
pushed out of bed every morning by them.
Well, I love this panel. I didn't realize when we were putting this panel together that everyone has young kids, for the most part, except for Andrea and me, but, but we all have kids. So, and yeah, that's definitely something that gets you out of bed, as I was implying earlier, whether you want to or not, but also for all those great reasons. For me, it would have been reading stories. I love reading stories. Now they don't want me to read stories to them, but I love reading stories to kids. All right, so what we're going to do now is give our panelists a chance to grab a drink of water, whatever they need to do, take a minute. We're going to send them backstage. I want to sincerely thank Amanda, Andrea, Mandy, Bailey, and Kate. Thank you so much for your time today. Head backstage and we'll get your breakout set up. Everyone else stay with me for 1 minute. We're just going to give our panelists a break here. And also, I just wanted to let you know that we have 2 more of these panels. We're doing one next week, same time, same place next week and the week after. And I wish I knew exactly which schools are taking part, but it's Columbia and MIT and I think INSEAD and LBS, and there's a handful of schools, Georgia Tech, and I was just looking at these agendas recently. But in any event, come next week and the week after. As you can tell, these are a lot of fun, but also I find you often learn quite a bit. Even from the panelists who maybe they're not working for a school that you're thinking of applying to, but there's a lot of really good admissions advice being given out. So encourage everyone to just keep attending. This is going to make you great applicants. And the other thing I would encourage you to do is spend a little bit of time on clearadmit.com. As you probably all know by now, our website's free. We don't charge candidates. It's just there's free content. ClearAdmit's mission is to promote management education. So we really believe in management education as a force for good. You can do all kinds of things on our website. You can share your profile and get feedback. And it's anonymous, so that's always fun. We have an amazing AI bot that we built that's based solely on the content that we've authored over the years and all the interviews we've done with folks like those who joined us today. So there's just a wealth of content. And we also have a podcast that airs every Monday that I co-host, that you can sign up for on Apple or Spotify. It's just called the ClearAdmit MBA Admissions Podcast. So those are just a few things that you can do on the website. I encourage everyone to take advantage of it. Again, our goal is to just help you navigate this process, and to make you as informed as possible. So again, thanks for everyone for joining us. What we're going to do now is we're going to share the breakouts, and you can't be in multiple rooms at once, as any of you who've used Zoom already know, but you can bounce around. So if you get a question answered in one group, in one school's room, you can then go to another. And the last thing I'll say is if for some reason you're using Zoom just in like a web browser, you may need to actually use the Zoom app to be able to access the different breakouts. I don't know if that's still the case, but I think that might be the case with the way that Zoom works. So you might need to switch into app mode to get into the breakouts. But I hope to see everyone next week. In the meantime, please go and hang out with our panelists. They're anxiously waiting to answer all your questions. And yeah, really appreciate everyone's time, and we'll see you next week.